Hello and welcome all. Thank you for having us here. And let's move forward. So continuing to what my CEO mentioned, I'm gonna go a little bit forward in the technical side, explaining how we usually do intelligence operations, how we are different, and how we focus on operations rather than just a platform. So just a bit about me, I'm actually a former hacker who managed to ethically hack Pentagon, and I was ranked the top hacker in the world by the US Department of Defense back in 2019. So to understand the threats, actually, we know that, threats are not just a breach, a leak, or whatever. It actually comes from an actual material compromise. So talking about vulnerabilities that are happening all over the infrastructures, the restrictions, parameters, controls, and so on. You have, as G mentioned, the door knockers that just try random exploits that try to knock to all doors and try to hack randomly. So on, you have the noise, denial of services, and so on. So how we actually can mitigate such threats is simply by implementing a proper threat intelligence, let's say, operation that allows you to understand your threat risk. So focusing on two main things: whether you are being targeted or not, or whether you have an actual material breach. And by material breach, we mean an actual compromise. So it's not just a data breach, it is actually the thing that caused this data breach. Because if you know you have a breach, for example, of your email password, you fixed it, it's actually not, you're not fixing the problem, because you need to know how this breach came at the first place. So maybe a compromised device, compromised network, maybe a third-party compromise, and so on. So we focus on an actual threat risk, allowing you to know when you were being targeted and when did you have an actual material breach. How we do it, because we simply focus on monitoring people rather than monitoring technology. Well, we are a data company, we focus on data, we focus on intelligence, we focus on human investigation and hunter operation. So we monitor actually around 35 to 38 million threat actors on the whole internet, including dark web, open source, closed source, and so on. So we monitor real hackers. Well, I'm a former hacker. We understand the criminal mindset, behavior, and so on. So we know what hackers look for. We know what threat actors actually want, what they want to achieve. And when we focus on monitoring threat actors, we understand these mindsets, behaviors, analysis, and we deliver by that an actual piece of intelligence, because we're focusing on not just TTPs or IOCs, because IOCs or TTPs is something after an incident happened. Well, if you're looking at 0 days, no one will tell you what is the exploit unless they take the advantage of it, right? So we focus on actual intelligence because we monitor these people that are inventing these 0 days, malwares, botnets, all these activities, and trying to do something with it. So by having an actual piece of intelligence, you do the actionable part. By that, we provide you a very easy data format, data sets that can be integrated, that also can reduce the false positive. So when you have an intelligence operation, you actually don't worry about getting the actual piece of intel. You just worry about how I'm gonna fix my problems. It's worth mentioning that we don't buy data, we don't have second-hand data, we acquire data by our own, again, because we do offensive operation, human intelligence, manual investigation, and we have a team called Hunter Unit. So Hunter Unit is actually a human intelligence operation unit, R&D, and so on, that invest in 0 days, vulnerability research, and discover real, actual threat actors. So our kind of like a part of our hunter unit being ranked in top programs. Me personally, you as the OD rank 1. We have team ranked first in IBM and all other companies where we actually invest in the security research. We help companies, governments, and so on to secure their not only vulnerabilities but also any type of threat. So how we monitor threat actors? Simply by analyzing anything related to a certain person on the internet that has certain malicious intent, not only activity. Because if you understand a certain, let's say, certain post on certain forum or certain, like any behavior, any registration in a certain entry, you can actually, so we are capable of pulling out all the relations, acronyms, monikers, and aliases and map them all together. So yes, we do use AI, machine learning, all this stuff, but it's more manual investigation, offensive operation. So from identifying nicknames, usernames to real geolocation tracking, which we do it for our governmental clients, and we do also do counter-terrorism as well. As Jim mentioned, we focus on 3 main pillars: the offensive, the defensive, and the intelligence operation. So if we want to link our portfolio, we usually do this. We do cover the whole cyber threat intelligence in a massive library called Context, which actually acts as your workbench to do forward hunting, analysis, investigations, monitoring, and so on. So no need for you to go on the dark web because we cover this part, and you can use our platform to do it for you. Part of Context, we understood the need for the companies to build a monitoring platform or monitoring program to identify any threat targeting them. So we've built a risk, which is actually your digital risk monitoring, brand reputation protection, call it what you want, and it actually focuses on answering 3 main questions. Are you being targeted? Who's targeting you? And whether you have a material breach or not. We do have other product services. It's not our, it's not worth mentioning now, but what I want to focus is simply the hunter. So, well, as we always say, us is not a product. It's an extension to the client team. So when you have human operators, it's all what you want. Because when you have data, you can build any technology out of it. So some examples, for example, if we want to see breaches, leaks, compromises, as said, we monitor the whole dark web. We can identify if there is certain leaks, certain compromise, certain data for sale, and so on. And as mentioning, because we monitor threat actors, our main focus is to identify all the relations related to these threat actors. So from one single post or one single file being on sale on the dark web, we can map all things together to identify the relations, who's working with the threat actor, what other places he's visiting, his personal information. In the end, we go to the real names and to also geolocation tracking. How we do this? Because simply we do cover the upstream access and we do cover the botnet intelligence. So we are considered the largest dark web and botnet aggregators in the world, covering or being able to stay persistent inside the criminal environment. So part of the offensive operation is not just, it's not about hacking someone or hacking something. Well, offensive operations mean that the ability to develop a chain of assets having an upstream access inside the criminal environment to stay persistent there, exfiltrating anything that is being transferred between real threat actors and directing it to the needed clients to fix their problems. So we monitor a lot of compromised devices, compromised networks. This is as an example. For example, for just a certain country, if I type UAE on the platform, I'm capable to see all the leaked credentials. For example, anything that is related to certain country, domain, IP, so on, the list goes on. And also, we are capable of detecting something we call a precursor to breach or event before it happens. That's why you will notice in the up records that you have two dates, the date and the import date. So something we try to educate our customers is we don't recycle data, we provide intelligence, meaning that before the data is leaked on the dark web, we are capable of informing you that the device is compromised. Prepare yourself because this data will be leaked. So you can actually go fix the problem before the data gets leaked. So even if the data is leaked, now you already changed passwords, format the computer, and so on. So it's not only about this IP location, where the malware is installed on the victim device and so on, but it's also about all the files that were exfiltrated from the victim machine. So, we've been in a lot of use cases and a lot of, not only clients, but also companies where they suffer from a certain breach, certain leak, they start pinging me and telling me, well, we need to find this file on the dark web, we need to make it disappear, or we need to download it, wherever. I tell them the problem is not in getting the file from the dark web, but it is in finding the actual breach or compromise that allowed this file to be leaked at the first place. Well, this is how files are leaked. When you have actually the data or the FTP credentials of the whole company from a compromised device, for sure, the FTP credentials won't be for sale. Why? Because simply the threat actors where Pivot will do something we call chaining vulnerabilities. So simply they will log into the server, they will download the files, then they will sell the files later, they will segregate them, categorize them, separate them, and then they will sell them. That's why it's not easy to map the relations when you have an actual material breach. So via us, you can actually identify the root, the source of the actual compromise. Well, so all these data, if they get leaked in the future, you can know that the source is one. It's just one compromised device. So we make it easy, and by that, you can also. So other example, let's say you hear about email leakage, sensitive information being leaked on the dark web, and so on. Well, actually, because the threat actors are capable of exfiltrating autofills, keyloggers, cookies, and so on from your browsers. So let's say you're logging in, you have the email. Two-factor authentication can be bypassed. So last year, we were capable of detecting and preventing a zero-day vulnerability that was called evil proxy, which allowed the threat actors to bypass the multi-factor authentication of important companies like Google, Microsoft, and so on. So we were the ones who found it, and we were the ones who did active hunting on the dark web on their site. We involved our red team operation, and we were capable of leaking the source code of the threat actors that allowed them to disappear from the dark web. So this is where we call an offensive operation, and this is how we actually work. So we generate IOCs, we generate TTPs, we generate all these things. We do collect the rest, but we generate these stuff as well. So we don't focus on what's happening there. We do our own work as well. So two-factor authentication can be bypassed, as we see here, because if you have all the codes pre being submitted, so you can actually submit them as the hacker and gaining access. Yep, the list goes on. So I like to show briefly how we can get data and what capability we can offer from single breach to identify the root cause. I will be happy to answer questions later on, and thank you.